Were you doing what it takes to win? You had too many people going after him for stuff that wasn't going to stick. It wasn't going to influence his voters. So what I would say to you, Whoopi, and what I would say to anybody that doesn't want J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or somebody like that to succeed him, focus on what's going to win.
Whoopi Goldberg clearly didn't see Stephen A. Smith pushing back this hard, and his response completely flipped the conversation. What began as a routine on-air discussion quickly turned tense as he challenged her points one after another. The reaction in the studio said it all. Even the audience seemed caught off guard by how intense the exchange became. Before we continue, if you enjoy quick commentary videos with detailed breakdowns like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, let's jump right into the story.
Well, it is a mandate, and I'm going to explain why. And I don't mind the question, but let me be very clear. I'm no supporter of Trump. I'm a supporter of truth and the facts. And here's the facts. The man won every swing state. He increased in terms of his voter turnout in his favor from the standpoint of blacks, Latinos, and young voters. He increased his numbers in that regard from 2020. 89% of the counties shifted to the right. That's a mandate. We can sit up there and play around all we want.
That moment changed the direction of the discussion. Stephen A. focused on the electoral map, the key battleground states, and the final results, then openly stated what the rest of the panel avoided admitting. He argued that Trump's victory reflected a clear rejection of the Democrats, not simply widespread support for Trump himself. Meanwhile, voices like Whoopi tried to frame the defeat as something minor or circumstantial. Stephen A. pushed back against that narrative completely, and the atmosphere on set instantly became tense.
Well, but the problem is that if you're the Democratic Party and you lost 49.8% to 48.3%, and you're looking at that 1.5% dip, that's an excuse for you to say, what we did really wasn't that bad. We should continue to do that. No, don't continue to do it. Find a new strategy.
But do you think those groups, the black voters, the Latino voters, and the others that you mentioned, are they going to regret it soon?
Possibly. I think so. I don't like what I'm seeing from Trump. I didn't like what I saw with Zelensky. I didn't like what I saw with a few things. But in the end, the point, I didn't like it. But in the end, what it comes down to is this. The American people, in their eyes, it wasn't about him. They were voting against what the Democrats were throwing.
Stephen A. shifted the focus away from Trump himself and placed attention directly on the Democrats' mistakes. According to his point, voters were not only supporting Trump, many were reacting against the direction, attitude, and messaging coming from the Democratic side. That argument changed the entire tone of the discussion. Suddenly, the issue was bigger than one Republican figure. It became about how Democrats were being perceived by the public. Once that perspective entered the conversation, applause from the studio could no longer shield the panel from the criticism. Then the debate became even more intense when Stephen A. brought up Kamala Harris and the party's handling of the situation surrounding Biden. He argued that Democratic leaders were aware of Biden's struggles much earlier than they publicly admitted. Instead of addressing those concerns directly, they continued pushing forward while expecting voters to accept the situation until the political fallout became impossible to ignore.
You're referring to Kamala?
I would love it. I'm referring to all of them. Everybody, nobody's getting a pass from the Democratic Party. Well, again, she was the candidate, but we know what happened. I thought she was set up to fail by the Democratic Party personally because you bypassed the primary. Yeah. You knew that Biden wasn't ready. You knew it for a year, and you did nothing. And you were really trying to sell the American people on pushing him forward as a Democratic nominee, knowing that inauguration he would have been 82 years of age. Stop it.
Argument hit hard because it completely removed the idea that the loss was simply unfortunate timing. At the same time, it pointed directly at the system and decisions that led to the collapse. Stephen A. was not praising Republicans or celebrating their success. His point was that Democrats created many of their own problems through the way they handled everything internally. Once that perspective took over the discussion, figures like Whoopi were no longer seen as protecting unfairly targeted people. Instead, they appeared to be standing behind a political approach that had already failed publicly.
It's important, I think, for Democrats to show that they stood with the LGBT community, that they stood with black women and women in general, because once you let us go, once you let women and...
First, that response may have sounded convincing, but Stephen A.'s argument was aimed at something entirely different. He was not criticizing women or minority communities themselves. His focus was on the repeated strategy of turning those groups into a defense whenever questions were raised about whether Democrats still understood how to connect with voters and win elections. According to his point, the real issue was not support for those communities. It was the way political criticism kept getting redirected instead of addressed directly.
You were about to disagree.
I was disagreeing with this. As a Democrat, the bottom line is this. When we talk about poor people, who ain't thinking about poor people? Democratic Party, I know I do. I know that most candidates within the Democratic Party that I know they think about poor folks. I know they think about the desolate and the disenfranchised. I get that. But what I'm saying is that during the campaign, were you doing what it takes to win? You had too many people going after him for stuff that wasn't going to stick. It wasn't going to influence his voters. So what I would say to you, Whoopi, and what I would say to anybody that doesn't want J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or somebody like that to succeed him, focus on what's going on.
That point changed everything. Stephen A. separated emotional messaging from election strategy, arguing that supporting communities was not the issue. The real problem was Democrats failing to run a campaign capable of defeating their opponents.
What is the winning issue now?
Affordability and safety.
Yes.
Period. Affordability and safety.
Which affects all those groups.
And a willingness to cross the aisle and show that you're willing to work with people to get stuff done so we don't have this chaos just because we...
Even beyond that heated exchange, Stephen A. repeated the same argument. Democrats will only recover by focusing on real voter concerns instead of political messaging. He also criticized Whoopi for avoiding direct accountability and relying on selective narratives.
But in the end, the Democrats give the credit where credit is due at this particular moment in time. I think that they've learned from some of their mistakes anyway. When you see what happened in New York with Mamdani, when you see what happens in New Jersey with Cheryl as the governor, when you see what happens with Spanberger in Virginia, clearly there's something that's going on within the Democratic establishment that's saying, let's focus on real issues that are pertinent to the American people. Let's make sure we articulate ourselves appropriately so we don't lose sight of what the message should be. Leading up to the election, they did just that, and I thought they...
That moment revealed the pattern clearly. Criticism was quickly reframed as disrespect whenever women became central to the discussion. Stephen A. challenged that approach directly, while Whoopi escalated tensions after Alyssa Farah Griffin compared America and Iran differently.
Wasn't it? Damn, Serena was great.
Yeah.
Why is it about some ex-boyfriend she hasn't thought?
Because it wasn't about that. And I'm surprised that Stephen A. Smith actually missed the moment.
He's a provocateur.
Yes, he is.
I love him.
This was Serena crip walking was really about what happened to her when she did the same crip walk after she beat Sharapova in the 2012 Olympics. She did that crip walk then, and it was on Wimbledon grass, and everyone said that it was disrespectful. So for Serena, because she was dancing, so she was doing a crip walk, which is
Disrespectful to who? The grass?
That comparison relied more on emotional impact than clear reasoning. For a brief moment, it sounded dramatic, but many people quickly challenged it afterward. Comparing racial struggles in America to the legal restrictions faced by women in Iran blurred major differences instead of explaining them. Then Bill Maher stepped into the conversation, and the debate shifted again.
So that's why I said you weren't saying what I heard was not what you meant.
I think it's very different to live in the United States in 2025 than it is to live in Iran.
Not if you're black.
not for everybody.
Not if you're black.
His point went far beyond criticizing one controversial statement from Whoopi. He argued that shows like The View were ultimately hurting the political side they claimed to support. Instead of presenting liberal viewpoints in a focused and convincing way, the program often came across as overly emotional and disconnected from everyday reality. According to that argument, the show had shifted away from genuine discussion and turned into a space that mainly reinforced existing beliefs. Then came the moment that pushed the debate even further.
We were talking about the trans issue before, and the New York Times really has come over on that to the sort of the sensible, liberal, not crazy woke position. I think this is a great first step toward getting the Democrats back to sanity. And a second good step would be, we got to do something about The View. I really believe that. I mean,
Wesley Hunt approached the discussion differently, using personal background, generational perspective, and lived examples to show that American progress exists even with its flaws. That contrast is what made the earlier framing appear exaggerated. When facts, scale, and real-world experience enter the conversation, emotional framing loses its strength. Stephen A. leaned on strategy, Wesley Hunt leaned on personal history, and Bill Maher used sharp humor, but all of them disrupted the same narrative pattern. The core point was no longer just about one comment. It became about whether a protected political story can stand when it's challenged without slogans. And when that happened, the usual defenses didn't hold up the same way. Now the question is simple. Did Stephen A. actually land the decisive moment, or did Whoopi still raise a valid point that got drowned out in the intensity? Let your thoughts in the comments. If you watched till the end, like the video, subscribe for more breakdowns, and I'll see you in the next one.
My district in the great state of Texas is actually a white majority district that President Trump would have won by 25 points. As I said, I'm a direct descendant of a slave. My great-great-grandfather was born on a Rosedown plantation. I am literally being judged not by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. That's the progress because, like, a lot of white people had to vote for me. A lot. So I don't even ever want to hear Whoopi Goldberg's conversation about how it's worse to be black in America right now.